Hi, hello, YouTubers. I wanted to speak on a pretty touchy subject, and I notice when people talk about Black history, uh, they pretty much leave out biracial people. And I just wanted to kind of explain my dilemma of being who I am. Um, I'm going to have to say as a mixed race, and to a lot of African Americans, I have to admit that a lot of people are affected when they hear that word, but that is actually the truth. But I have to say this from my own experience, and you need to thoroughly hear this story out, because when you thoroughly hear the story out, you're going to actually, your mouth is going to actually drop when you hear this story. And for some time, I've been kind of thinking about putting this out in the public so people can be aware of stories like this. And this is actually true. Um, so just tell me what you think. Okay, so maybe I should say once upon a time. Once upon a time, this is a true story. I was actually minding my own business. My at the time, my mother-in-law uh, was getting treatment for stage 4 cancer, and uh, it was in remission. So I have to say she didn't have cancer anymore, but she still needed to do the ongoing follow-up appointments with her doctor. So I happened to be in a van with um, another relative of mine, and and the person that was in the van with me, who was the patient, put it like that. My husband was supposed to come along with me, and if it makes the story any different, my husband is African American, and with him being African American, you know right off he's African American. Um, with me, like right now, um, I appear as African American because, uh, it's summertime coming up, and actually, it's summertime now. My skin gets darker in the summer, and I don't apply any suntan lotion. I don't add any skin lightening cream, because some African Americans do that. And I know this because I used to be a makeup artist in the past, but that's a whole different subject. Um, I was adopted, okay? Reasons being that my um, my biological mother was a single mom who was Italian American. My father, I don't know who he was, so I guess you're guessing he's African American. So I I have to say this is where the ball dropper is. This is where your mouth starts to drop, because this happened to me too. Not only seeing that a man came into my life who claimed he was my father was actually um, I guess you could say to some people would say, no way, no way it could possibly be your father. So I'm guessing from theory that when um, I'm guessing in the, I guess you could say in the wintertime, my skin is very light. And I'm not kidding you, is very light. I'm like a vampire. I'm very pale. And at that time of the season, I like to apply a medium tone, um, medium beige color foundation to my skin. But, it's just something that I like to do. It doesn't really mean anything. But in a way, it does, because when you start saying, okay, a man who is very dark complected, and a man comes to you and say he's your father, uh it does honestly make you second guess, and it also um make you question, okay, I'm going to need a DNA test. But for my family members, especially one who was outraged to the fact that I could be half African American like herself. I mean, she thought I was African American from mixed race, but she had no clue that I was half African American. Or you could say one half of me is at least 70% African, okay, through African American culture. Um, Let me pause this for a second. Hold on. Okay, it looks like we're still on. Okay, I'm sorry. I had to pause it for a minute because I actually had to think and reflect on what just happened. Um, Thinking back on the situation about my biological father. And I'm thinking, wow, how many African Americans are out there who really want to see their child, and then they're in a situation where a family member says, get away, go away, don't come back here anymore. Now, I'm not saying, okay, I'm giving him a bunch of excuses to why he shouldn't see his daughter, but I'm thinking this could be one reason to why I was not able to see my biological father, or had a chance to at least see who I am as a person, at least first, and then added on to back history of on my husband's side. I have to say, in terms of education for African Americans, I'm not saying for all, but from what I learned, a lot of African Americans did not finish school, and they were lucky if they were able to finish the sixth grade, because sixth grade is where it stopped. It was the cutoff point. Cutoff point. Now, on my adoptive mother's side, I was very used to mixed culture race. I'm talking about to the extent where I had a family member with blue eyes, blonde hair. I was not allowed to hold her because she looked very, very Caucasian. I'm not going to say white. I'm going to say looked very Caucasian. I noticed that with my adoptive family, based on that story, it's a situation I'll never forget because I was 16 years old and it just felt very humiliating. And it's not the fact that she so-called looked white, it was the fact that how I was treated because I was not allowed to hold her because you know maybe they thought people like me might carry germs. I don't know. I really don't know. I don't know what my family said to them, but I was a very clean girl. I never had sex before. I never cursed, you know. Um, I came from a Christian family background, but my adoptive mother had a habit when she was younger, smoking and cussing when things were not clean. She would say the word God and then DAMN, real loud, which is kind of common for I guess you could say some Southern black women or Southern I guess you could say trailer trash white women would talk like that. But some reason she would act like that, and she was a very educated woman to the outside world and for her job, but she was not so big on helping me every single moment of the day in terms of fulfilling my education. But this is not what the YouTube video is really about. I want to kind of focus more on the fact of what I had to deal with being African American, and if I am African American, and a lot of people have a lot to say about that for people like that. And I have to say, it is so unfair. It is really unfair because I live in America. I'm half Italian. The other half of me might be African. I don't know. It's not my fault. Some people are in the situation, they don't know what they are. They're mixed with so many things, and I just happen to be one of those people. I'm not trying to deny my race. Matter of fact, I'm trying to get some kind of explanation, understanding about life. Heck with race, I don't really give a hoot. Because I love who I am. I'm just keeping it real. I'm keeping it real. And I have to say, by me being from an adoptive African American family, I have to say, without a doubt, my spirit is definitely African American. But how my family treated me, which was my in-laws, when they seen my possible father come into my life, Sorry there, I had to see who was calling there. But anyway, for me to actually see the possibility that a man could possibly be my father, and why I'm thinking the possibility could be is because I wrote a letter to Social Security, and they said to me, "We will help you find your birth father." And I was doing that for basically health reasons and just to kind of get more knowledge about myself. I mean, is there anything wrong with that? You be the judge. And when you answer that question, judge it fairly and think it out really good. I want to end it here, but there's one other thing I do want to say before I go. And I just wanted to say that my adoptive family was from the South. I've actually seen a lot, even though I was younger than them, because my biological father, he died. Not biological father, my adoptive father died couple of months back, I would say about a year now. And he was 90 when he died. And he told me a lot of stories. He told me a lot of stories about the African American heritage and the things that he went through and he saw. And if anybody wants to make a stereotype about African Americans, you need to know my father's story before you start making a stereotype that's not fair. Because my father was a legend in my own eyes. He was a jazz musician. He taught a lot of African American children in Richmond School District. And I'm not going to say his name because you could probably research for yourself jazz musicians at Richmond School District. And then you'll find out who my father was. He was a man who told me that when he was a little boy, this was after slavery ended, he was picking cotton for 5 cents a bag. I was like, whoa, okay. So I didn't really know my history really well, okay? I'm sorry. I didn't know. But I was asking questions because when I was in school, they didn't really give the great details that I needed to know for my African American history. And I'm going to be honest with you, as for the Caucasian history, it was very boring. No offense, it was very boring. I I nearly failed history. Okay? And when you don't know your African American history, what is history at all? How can you learn the rest of your history without knowing about um, the whole economic structure of America? And then I return back to college and I find out things about African American history that will freaking blow your mind. And I have to say, I was grateful that I returned back to college. So actually, I was working on studying a nursing degree. But I have to say, I'm glad that my father told me these things. And he told me a lot of other things, but, I'm not going to share it right now. Um, but as for my mom, when I was growing up, and I mean my adoptive mother, she's a great woman. I have to say that. She's a great woman in the sense of she did the best she could, what she thought is right. She's really up in age right now. Um, but that's fine. And but I'm just kind of reflecting, you know, how people are. It just seems like it's just a whole different world. A whole different world. When I was dealing with her, it was like a Mama Dearest story. Every day, that's why I have mixed feelings about adoption, and people make it seem like it's so good, and a part of it is good, but you know, sometimes stereotypes affect how people live. And that's just all I have to say right now. Thank you, and you have a good day. Bye bye.